Hello guys, welcome to Zip Code, and today we are looking at another cup of code. We are talking all things Spring Security via LDAP. So we want to see how we can authenticate our users from our Spring Boot application, pass them through an Active Directory, and be able to authenticate them on our microservices. So uh, we're going to talk LDAP, what it is, use cases, and how we can plug it into our microservices architecture. So we will talk about that. Without wasting any of your time, let's get right into it. So LDAP is a lightweight directory access protocol. So it's a protocol to access, let's say, user or groups or access groups for specific users within an organization. It manages resources and services. So if a user has is assigned to a particular group, then that user can access resources, services such as applications that are allowed within that group or available within that group. So LDAP is the protocol that is used to basically go to our Active Directory, make sure that all the rules that we have set in place for our applications, let's say maybe Microsoft Outlook or let's say Jira, let's say whatever internal application within your organization, they can set some rules for that and you can apply for that particular access, and that is basically handled by your Active Directory, which is then authenticated via LDAP. So we are going to be seeing that. So if you've been to corporate or you're just starting out, you want to understand what is LDAP, how to set it up in Spring Boot, we'll be hashing that out in this particular tutorial. So without wasting of your time, let's start with the project. So we're going to start on the initializer. As always, we start from here, build our project, map and paste. The language is Java. The Spring Boot version, always take the latest stable version, and it's 2.2.5 is the recording of this video. The project metadata group always com.zip code, artifact LDAP JWT Auth microservice, and it's a demo project for Spring Boot. Packaging is Java, and the Java version is 17. Always latest stable versions, please, so that you have long-term support. So please do get those. Moving on to the dependency side, we have dev tools for live reload when we make some changes on our code. The server bounds on its own. And then we have Lombok for boilerplate code, so we can annotate some of the access modifier methods, getters, setters, and things like that. So it's easy for us to write maintainable code. So we have, and the next one is Spring Web. We're going to be scaffolding an endpoint, so we will need Spring Web for our RESTful web services. And then we have Spring Data JPA. This is for us to connect to our database to get roles for our specific user. Let's say maybe roles that are specific to this particular service. So we can use our database, and then we can also get roles from LDAP itself, from the LDAP server, based on which group the employee or user is assigned to. We can also get them from LDAP, but we will see that when we go into the code. So Spring Security is the next one, and obviously we want to make sure that we protect our application, protect our web service, and we are also able to feed back our JWT token. And we have a Postgres driver. We're connecting to a Postgres database. Then we have Spring LDAP as the final guy. So this is basically the key dependency within this project. And if you need LDAP and you only need a database, let's say maybe to log the requests, like users logging in and things like that, you can actually just use the database for logging all your request and response and monitor how people are using your service. So pretty much that's about it on the dependencies. There are other two dependencies which are JWT dependencies that I will show you on the POM file because we're getting those externally. They are not available within the initializer as yet. So let's continue into the repository for this project. It's already available, and you can basically get it on our Git repository, LDAP JWT Auth microservice. So we want to make sure that when a user logs in, so let me show you in our Postman, we have a controller here, which is HTTP localhost 8080 identity token, and we basically have a username and password that we use as test and password. And basically, if we send this guy, you will see that we'll get a feedback with our token and a refresh token. So that's how it looks like. And in this tutorial, we'll be trying to achieve this same setup, and we can start using our token and see if users can basically do whatever they want. But let's jump into the JWT token and JWT.io and see how this looks like. So before we continue, guys, I would really like for you to comment on the audio quality and also the video quality. These are two things that are very important when it comes to tutorials and how we deliver them. So we would appreciate it if you shared your view, opinion, and let us know where we can improve. And also please do like and subscribe if you appreciate the tutorial and the videos that we offer. So for us to improve, we'd really appreciate some feedback, and that's about it with that tangent. So back into the video, let's continue with our JWT. So now we see that it's a JWT and the algorithm is HS256, and we can see the roles that we have. This user has role admin, and they also have role user. So they have multiple roles, and those are available there. The issue, or the subject rather, is test. The issuer is zip code, and we can see the initial time and the expiry time is basically that. So we can see everything within our JWT, and that looks correct. So we'll see this in the code base. Let's move to our Spring Tool suite. Or before moving to Spring Tool suite, what we will need to set up also is our LDAP. We will need to set up our LDAP locally. If you have one that's already available within your space, then that's fine, you can use that. But to set up your LDAP in the application properties, as you can see here, there is the initializer for the project configuration, which is this guy right here. So all this config, you can take that from the Git repo. Just copy this initializer URL, paste it on your browser. It will take you straight to this configuration. And then for the LDAP Docker setup, just go to digital.ai. They do have a very short and sweet guide as to how to set up LDAP within your environment. So that's basically about it in terms of the setup that you are going to need. And once your LDAP is set up, let me show you on my Docker. You will see that I have an LDAP service running, and I go back to my containers. I have LDAP service running, and I also have PHP LDAP admin service, which is the user interface that I basically interact with in regards to my LDAP, adding users, adding configurations that I want, and things like that. So if I go to my LDAP, you will see that I am logged in as CN admin. Then I have a DC of XL DC com. So that's basically my user. And then here I added one organizational user. Let's call it that. And this guy has a common name, which is test, and I have an object class. It's inet org person, top, and person as well. So these are the object classes that I use. And the surname is test. So I only have 1, 2, 3 attributes for this particular user or this particular template. And I can add more attributes based on what I want. Say I also add, let's see, what can we add? We can add mobile, we can add email. So you can see that we have a lot. So we can have username, we can have password. So say if I want to add password here, I can basically type in the password, and we can see that the hashing algorithm is MD5. So I need to make sure that if I'm authenticating my user via the LDAP password, like I'm doing on the endpoint right here, so I have username is test and the password is password. So if I'm using that, I need to make sure that my password is MD5 hash before I can check it against my LDAP server. So whatever hashing you select here, or whatever is applicable to your organization, environment, and space, make sure that you align to that so that there's no confusion as to the hashed password when you authenticate. So those are the considerations you need to take. But this is a tutorial. I'm not gonna add a new attribute. I'm just gonna send the common name and make sure that I get my user based on the common name only. I'm just adding the password so that you are aware that you will be adding more sort of rules into the password. Hence, you can just follow that hashing algorithm that is allowed on your space and use that. So let's jump into the code. Right. So application properties, nothing fancy here. There's Spring application name, which is LDAP microservice. JWT secret, just a random qubit. And then we have the localhost Postgres DB. We are connecting to a database which is Postgres. That's the username and password. DLL update auto. Then we're following the dialect. And then we have our LDAP configuration. So Spring LDAP URL. We are pointing to localhost. So LDAP 127.0.0, which is localhost. 389 is the port that we're pointing to. The username, same as the one that I showed you on the user interface. It's basically that. And the password is password. And then the base domain name is the XL.com. That's the base domain name for our LDAP setup. So now that we've got all of these configurations out of place, now we are getting into the thick of it. So let's go into the controller. I want us to start in the controller, or rather let's start in the main class. Go to the main class so that you can see what we have. So main class, we have a annotation enable LDAP repositories. Then I point to the base packages that my LDAP repositories are going to reside. So you will see that it's com zip code, LDAP microservice, repository, LDAP, and everything in there. So everything in this package, it will be regarded as an LDAP repository, and is going to be treated as such. So, and I also have the password encoder, like I mentioned. On my side, I'm using bcrypt because I bcrypted my password on the database, but then LDAP one, I'm not using that password because bcrypt is going to encrypt my password. So I would need to, in here, when I add this attribute, what I need to do is, let's say password, then here I need to make sure that this is crypt, and then I can just say, let me just do password. Let me say check password compared to password. Say compare passwords match and things like that. So once this is set up, then you can be able to verify that your hashing algorithm is working, or the password that you've selected is working fine. And once I save this user, it means then I will basically go through via the password with the encryption of crypt. So that's basically the only thing that you need to cater for, that the password encoder is aligned to what you or your environment requires, so that when the bean kicks in, you are good to go. Now that it's hashed out, let's go into the identity controller. We're going to start from the controller itself. So we have address controller, and we have a request mapping of identity, just like we have here on our Postman identity. And then on the identity, we have a token. So this is a post mapping of token, and you will see that it's nothing heavy, very straightforward. So let's see how that looks like. So we have a create authentication token. It takes a request body of authentication request. In the authentication request, it has a username and password, and it has default constructors, and it has all of these access modifiers. Now, let me show you the power of Lombok. So with Lombok available, what we can do is add getter, add setter, add all arguments constructor, add no arguments constructor, and now that we have that, watch this. I can get rid of all of this code. Boom, voila. And now my class or my Pojo looks like that. And it basically created the same things that I had with just 4 annotations, and everything was resolved. So now I can save this and everything will be fine. So let's go back to identity controller. So now we know it takes an authentication request which has username and password, and then that particular request we then do a try to authenticate a user. So before we do the authentication, let me just go through the dependency injections that we have. So we have a dependency injection here, AutoWire, our user service, and this user service is basically the DB user. That's because there's custom roles that you can have that you set up in your database, and you need to connect to your database and make sure that the same, let's say maybe username exists in your database so that you can assign it to the specific roles based on that. And then we have AutoWire, the JWT token util, and the token util is there to create a token for us once our user is authenticated, and that's essentially what we want. And then we AutoWire our password encoder so that we make sure that it's encoded before we pass it to our LDAP server or to the database, and that's basically what we have. Then we have the LDAP principal repository, which is what we're going to use to retrieve an LDAP user based on the credentials that we received from our token request, right? So now that the dependencies have been hashed out, let's go and try authenticate. So the first thing first, we try to authenticate the user, and we see that authenticate takes in the username and it takes in the password. So let's go to authenticate and see what that guy looks like. So authenticate has username and password, and it basically goes to our AD principal. It goes to the LDAP principal repository and find by common name. As I mentioned earlier, here, let me go to the LDAP repository so that you can see how that looks like. So in the LDAP repository, this is at repository, and it extends a LDAP repository, and it has a object type of AD principal, and this is a custom Pojo, so I'll show you now. And we can find by the common name, or we can find by the common name and password. So hence I'm saying in our case, once you add the password attribute like this with the correct encryption, you come here, and then instead of find by CN, you'll find by CNN password, but you'll make sure that the password is already hashed by the time you send your request to LDAP. So we have these two, and the only difference in your code base is when you get to authenticate, right here, you will just find by CN and password, and what you want to do is to say password, let's do that, password encoder dot encode, and you basically want to encode the password just like that. So you say password encoder encode password, and we are using bcrypt. So once bcrypt is, or whatever hashing mechanism or algorithm rather that you've decided to go with, once that is hashed, then you pass that into the password, and so basically go and retrieve your LDAP user via the username and the password. So it's easy as this. The only thing is now I'm doing a tutorial, and I want to make sure that you have the flexibility to choose on your specific hashing algorithm for your password, and it's already available. The repository already caters for the common name and password. You just need to encode it and just use it. Essentially, that's about it. And then here, if the AD, or let's look at the AD principle. So if you go to the LD principle, you will see that it's a POJO. It has @ID, name ID, which is one required field that we need to have. And then we have the attribute. The attribute name is a CN, and the field that we're pointing to is CN. We can also say it's username, and we can basically use the password as well, and we can add another attribute like SN in that sense. So all the attributes that you want populated, you can basically populate them at that point, so that when the object comes back from AD, you can populate all the fields that you want. Things like your email and any other field that you want. Let's say maybe add attribute, and we go here. You will see that you have given name, home phone, initials, email address, manager, um, let's say post office box, postal code, all of these things, registered address, room number, all of these things, employee type, employee number, display name, all of these, you can basically define those variables here, and then they'll be populated according to that. And the one thing that we need to note with the AD principle is that annotation of entry. So for a database object, you have an annotation that is @entity, but this is an LDAP. This is an LDAP object, so it has an annotation of @entry, and that @entry has object classes, and these object classes align to what we have on our user in LDAP. So this is inet.org, top, and person, and these are the same object classes that we have here, so that LDAP server would know which object classes it needs to map or route these objects to. And the entry point is basically those object classes. And once it's able to map this guy and find this guy using those object classes, then only then it could populate the guy and then give you back the response. But if it can't map it to the object classes that you've defined, it will regard that as a null user, because it can point it to any object that it's familiar with. So be cognizant of the annotation @entry. That's basically what you're going to need. And once your POJO is set up, you will then be able to scaffold your LDAP repository in the same way. So the LDAP repository, which is extends the AD principle, and you can then find by whatever attribute that you have. You can even customize it to say maybe AD principle find by, let's say, email, and you can just say string like email, and we can use that to find the user by email or find by email and password, something like that. So you can be flexible enough to add your custom attributes that you want, and you can basically use those going forward. So you saw that there's things like employee numbers and things like that. You can also use those. It should apply for what you're trying to achieve. So that's essentially about it in the LDAP repository. Now that that is done, and we are back to our authenticate, we find by common name, which makes our life easy. So once the response comes back from LDAP, we know, we check that is the user null. If the user is null, we throw a exception, invalid credentials. So once we throw that exception, you will see how we handle that in the controller response. But otherwise, we catch a disabled exception, user disabled, bad request exception, invalid credentials, and then we also have a generic exception, which is like invalid credentials, and we just throw back the exception like that. So now that authenticate is done, we are happy that the AD gave us our user. Okay. I don't need this. All right. Hold on. Okay, cool. That's fine. Let's proceed. So now that LDAP has given us what we want, we come back here, and what we do is, if everything ran through fine, there's no exception that's going to be thrown on our authenticate. You will see that we then proceed to get the user details, and we basically go into our database now to load the user. So this piece, I'm not going to speak a lot on this piece, and the reason why is we already done this part on our Spring Security JWT Authentication. So this will just be a reiteration of everything that happens here. But essentially what we do, because LDAP has already validated our user, what we do is go into our database to get custom roles for this user in our database, in this service database. So we just load the user and we say authentication.get username. Once we find the user, we're able to create the token. So we use the JWT token. So let me just take you there now. Generate token. So this is also shared in the JWT tutorial. Please do have a look at that. You will get all the details of these last piece of the tutorial. So JWT util, we have all of these functions. We take our JWT secret, and then from the secret we're able to go and generate a token over here. You will see generate token is here. We pass in the user details once they are available, and then based on the user details we then say claims. We put the roles for this guy. We say user details get authorities. Just as you can see from our JWT this side, these are the authorities that the user has, and these are in the role object, and we have the admin and the user as these guys authorities. So that's what we set over here, and then we say do generate do generate token, and we basically generate the token for the user, and this is the same premise. The only thing is we are doing a refresh token for this one. So we have the generate token and generate refresh token, and that's the only difference. But you will see just now that we're only extending the time for the refresh token, and that's about it. So on the do generate token, we take in the claims, which is the user roles, and we take in the subject, which is the username. And then we have the JWT header, and we set the token type, which is JWT, and then we build our token over here. So the builder, we set the header, we set the claims, we set the subject, we set the issuer, we set the issue time, which is the current time, we set the expiration, which is that validity multiplied by 1,000. So whatever validity that you have, so you can see here is like 5 hours, something like that. And then with this 5 hours, we just go and make sure that the token is gonna expire after the 5 hours. So we say current time plus 5 hours, then it's gonna be valid for the next 5 hours. After that, it will basically expire, and you need to get a new token, or you can do like what we're doing here with the refresh token. We multiply that by 2. So if you look at here, we have times 2, which is what differentiates the initial token and the refresh token. Is this one stays for longer, the refresh token stays for longer. So the initial token is 5 hours, the refresh token is 10 hours. So you can use the refresh token for as much as you can, but as soon as that expires, then you need to authenticate again. So typically 10 hours should be more than enough to do what you need to do within a system. And then you have other functionality like or other methods that you can validate the token, make sure that everything is according to what you expect. If the username is not null, then the token is valid and things like that. And we can also see that we have is token expired, which is this guy right here. So you check the token is expired or not. Get all claims from token, so you get the roles, and then we have get expiry date from token to see when that expires. Get username from token, and you can basically get who the subject is from the token. So this is JWT token already shared in the Spring Security. So you can just go check that out. And once we have the token and the refresh token, we then respond back to our user and say, entity response, generate response with authentication, HTTP status, okay, and the authentication response is a token and refresh token. So if you look at the authentication response, is essentially a POJO, same as the request, the authentication request, but the main difference is this one only takes in the token values, that's it, and it feeds back to the user. So our entity response, we generate a response and send it back to the user, and it looks like what we have over here: the timestamp, the message, the status, the data, which is now the token, and the refresh token, just like that. So we have basically completed this part of the tutorial. So if you look at the packaging over here, there's a whole lot of packages that you see, all of which have been dealt with within the Spring Security JWT Authentication tutorial. So I wouldn't want to go back into that and try and explain something that's already available. So this was just a part to showcase how to use LDAP and overlay it with JWT over and above your Spring Security microservice. So the security configurations, everything has been explained in detail. So you have authentication manager, you have your JWT request filter, user detail service, and the password encoder, and all of these have been discussed at length. So if you want more details on these ones, I would say please do watch that tutorial in the description down below, Spring Security, and you will get all those details. But for now, I think we have hashed it out, seen how we can authenticate against LDAP, and we saw how to set up LDAP on our Docker instances and be able to create create users or add attribute to users. So if you want, let's say maybe you want to create a user, you can basically come in here and basically you can create, you add an attribute over there, and you can add whatever attribute that you want, and then you can say create a child entry. Yeah, creating child entry is the one that will give you the option to create a user, say, and you can decide which you want, like a Samba account or a generic user account. So let's say maybe a generic user account, and you can basically define all of these: the first name, last name, common name, user ID, password, and things like that. And you can also have like a GI ID number, home address, login, and then based on all of these that you set up, you can then say find user by common name and the password, and you can basically authenticate your users via that. So that's essentially it. And there's a whole lot more to be done in LDAP. So if you want more, please do comment down. Let us know what you want to know, what features of LDAP you are struggling with and you'd want a tutorial on. This one is just a startup, so you can be able to communicate with LDAP and get something working. But if there's something specific that you're struggling with and you want more information on or clarity on, please do let us know, and we will basically create a tutorial for you clearly to do so. And you can see the LDAP service has been running. So each time I hit the endpoint, let me just do one so that you can see. Let me set this and let's watch the LDAP. So you see the LDAP keeps on running and running and running and running. So it's able, this is the search base. This is our base domain name. and then it goes to filter, object class, INET person, object class top, object class person, and the common name is test. So you can see that it does create a search base, and then it goes to search with the attributes, attribute password, IDCN. So these are the attributes that are used in the AD principle that I just showed you now, which is this class right here. So these are the attributes that it's telling me about. And then the object class is basically the top ones, INET and top and person. And then you can see the search results is tag 101, error 0, number of entries found is 1. So there was a user that was found, and basically it's one user, and that user came back the way that we expected. So that's essentially about it with the LDAP setup, the LDAP integration. So if there's anything, please do let us know. But for now, cheers.